Wait, I know what you're thinking. I don't know what the brown bunny is. I've never heard of the brown bunny. Why should I care? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Brown Bunny is not only a case study in how the process of getting a film into a festival defines its development and its future, but it's also an example of something that very rarely happens in the relationship between filmmaker and film critic. First off, we have to ask, because I'm going to guess that 97% of you guys don't know the answer, what is The Brown Bunny about? The film is written, directed, and produced and stars Vincent Gallo, who you wouldn't be required to know. He's largely done independent experimental cinema. And experimental is a good word to describe The Brown Bunny. Gallo plays our hero Bud Clay. He's a professional motorcycle rider, or at least that's what the write-up of the film would have you believe. His status as a professional anything is left up to the imagination of the viewer. As the film begins, Bud is riding in a motorcycle race. This race seems to be semi-professional at best, but I digress. The racing sequence goes on for a while, but it does prepare you for the guerrilla filmmaking shooting style of this film. There's no close-ups, a lot of it's out of focus, and the race has no narrative. Who's winning is unimportant. It's not who's racing that's important, but that there is a race happening. Depending on how you are as a film watcher, you'll either find this sequence tedious or interesting. But I guarantee that the film will have you leaning towards tedious by the 4-minute mark. That's right, the film begins with a 4-minute, natural sound only motorcycle race, shot with long lenses with sketchy focus. This goes on for 4 minutes. From there, Bud leaves for this gas station where he has a very tortured conversation with this young woman.
You think you'd want to come with me?
I don't even know you.
Please.
Somehow, someway, Bud convinces this girl, who he's just met, to leave with him on a road trip. They make out a little bit, and as she goes into her house to get some things for the trip, Bud decides to leave. Yep, he's straight up out of there. So that sequence is weird. The movie gets weirder. Next, Bud travels. A lot. There's a lot of road shots in this movie, and they go on for quite a while. Like a long while. Sometimes in silence, sometimes with music, but always taking a lifetime. Hey, I know that city. I'm gonna guess that Gallo shot in Indianapolis guerrilla style, since the state of Indiana is notoriously unwilling to give filmmakers tax breaks. But I digress. Bud visits an older couple who, we gather, are the parents of his ex-girlfriend Daisy. This sequence takes a while, and is awkward.
Where do you live now?
I live in Los Angeles. Daisy and I live together in Los Angeles. We have a small house. And...
Do you have any children?
There's more driving. Good lord, there's a lot of driving in this movie. Bud stops at a rest stop, sees this woman that's not having a very good day, and they make out a little. And Bud moves on to a third girl, this time a prostitute who, for a change of pace, he doesn't make out with, but he does kick her out of his van after a ride around the block. And then Bud retires to a motel where he has a conversation with his ex-girlfriend Daisy, who's played by Chloe Sevigny. And the reason for Bud's sadness is revealed. It's also the scene which gives the film its notoriety. The film became notorious at the time because it ends in a graphic, completely unsimulated sex act between Gallo's Bud and Sevigny's Daisy. And before you begin Googling the scene, like the rest of the movie, it's not cinematic, it's not titillating, it's gratuitous and feels wrong, so there's that. Here's the thing about this cut of The Brown Bunny. It's a film so loosely edited, so devoid of character development, or action if you will, that this rundown of events seems unnecessary. Nearly nothing happens during the film's running time. The Brown Bunny is a film exclusively about feel. And that brings us to the 2003 Cannes Film Festival. The Brown Bunny's premiere at the festival could only be described as disastrous. Roger Ebert describes the scene at Cannes. The audience was loud and scornful in its dislike for the movie. Hundreds walked out, and many of those who remained only stayed because they wanted to boo. Imagine, I wrote, a film so unendurably boring that when the hero changes into a clean shirt, there's applause. When he walked out of the screening, Ebert was asked by a news crew what he thought of the film. Ebert responded by saying that it was the worst film in the history of the festival, a comment he would later walk back because he admitted he hadn't seen every movie in the history of the Cannes Film Festival, but the comment stuck. Gallo would respond by calling Ebert a fat pig in the New York Post and describing Ebert as having the physique of a slave trader in the New York Observer. Gallo would put a curse on Ebert's colon and a hex on his prostate. Later, Gallo would claim that he was joking. Ebert would write that he wasn't too worried, though. I had a colonoscopy once, and they let me watch it on TV. It was more entertaining than The Brown Bunny, which is a genuinely amazing burn. Ebert would go on and paraphrase Winston Churchill, writing, "It's true that I am fat, but one day I will be thin, and he will still be the director of The Brown Bunny." That sniping back and forth between artist and critic, it's amazing! And it's incredibly rare. The artist and critic almost always stay in their own lanes. It's remarkable that it doesn't happen more often. But a funny thing happened after all the barbs and bad reception at Cannes. Gallo went back to the drawing board with his film. He cut 26 minutes out of The Brown Bunny. That motorcycle race at the beginning of the film is a full 4 minutes shorter than it was at Cannes. Upon second viewing, Ebert actually liked the film, giving his coveted thumbs up. Gallo and Ebert had a nice conversation about the film in which Gallo describes the corners he had to cut to get the film ready for Cannes after his editor walked away from the project. I mean, Roger made it sound like they made up in a sense, although Gallo was still complaining about Ebert as late as last year, 5 years after Roger's death. And I don't know how much of that is Gallo's need to deny controversy while also using it to his advantage. Roger's gone, man. Just move on. And Vincent, The Brown Bunny is not good. It's a completely self-indulgent film. Even in its current state, it's tedious and pretentious. Watching it's like watching a shapeless blob trying to figure out what it wants to be. It's a film that uses a simple premise as its cornerstone, and its reveal isn't worth the time invested. It's a film that reeks of an artist thinking that his performance as an actor could portray everything that needed to be portrayed. There's a certain arrogance to it. To get ready for this film, I watched Gallo's previous film, Buffalo 66. Having watched that film, The Brown Bunny seems to make a little more sense because Gallo's worldview is out there for the audience to see.
Girls stink. They stink. They're evil. And they're all bad. All of them. They're backstabbers. Like you.
His character in Buffalo 66 is very similar to his character in The Brown Bunny, although he's got the guts to come right out and say what he's thinking. In The Brown Bunny, Bud just implies his beliefs because 100% of the character development in this film is backloaded. I somewhat understand why Ebert might have liked the film better the second time around. Knowing what happens in the final scene of The Brown Bunny can help define the entire film. Knowing why Bud does what he does during the film's running time, which is basically making out with women and staring off into the middle distance, could help the viewer relate to the character. But we have to want to watch the movie again to see it with fully informed eyes. And I don't. We at least need to want to think about it complexly, and I don't. While watching The Brown Bunny, I was reminded of two films. The first is A Ghost Story, a film that I admittedly didn't care for. In A Ghost Story, we see the two main characters' relationship, how good they were together, how much they loved each other. It sets up the motivation for the rest of the film. We know the reason why Rooney Mara's character longs for the companionship she once had, and why the ghost is hopelessly trapped between worlds. A Ghost Story does a nice job of laying the groundwork. The Brown Bunny needed to do that. If we saw how good Bud and Daisy were together, if we saw that for even a moment, Bud would be relatable. His scene after scene search for Daisy's replacement would be human. But the film fails in this regard. Of course, to do this, Gallo would probably have to go back and shoot more scenes with Sevigny, and he probably didn't have the budget to do that, nor the time. The other film I was reminded of was Gus Van Sant's Elephant. The film is a slice of high school life and stars mostly teenage non-actors who walk, like, a lot. That movie has a lot of walking, but the walking goes to show the monotony of a day in high school, and when the day goes to hell, the comparison is drastic. Slow-paced and naturalistic, sure, but again, it's in contrast to what happens in the final minutes of the film. The pacing of The Brown Bunny and Elephant is almost identical, but the reception was not. Both films premiered at the 2003 Cannes Film Festival. The Brown Bunny got booed, Elephant got the Palme d'Or. Vincent Gallo would complete one more film as of this taping. It's called Promises Written in Water. It remains unavailable to the general public. Even after having said all of that, part of me thinks The Brown Bunny might be worth watching. If you're an adult, because real sex stuff, kids. But it's a movie that might test you. It's a film you may absolutely hate. But it's a case study in how a movie can change when an artist is told that his movie sucks. Thanks for watching.